Good morning and welcome to Victory is Mine with Pastor Andy Stump of Victory Christian Center in Carthage, Missouri. Start your day with a powerful message of hope, faith, and victory in Jesus Christ. Here's Pastor Andy, bringing you encouragement straight from God's Word.
Good morning. I would like to take a closer look at Romans chapter 9, verses 30 through 33. Paul says, "What then shall we say? That the Gentiles who did not pursue righteousness have obtained it, a righteousness that is by faith. But Israel, who pursued a law of righteousness, has not attained it. Why not? Because they pursued it not by faith, but as if it were by works. They stumbled over the stumbling stone. As it is written, See, I lay in Zion a stone that causes men to stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. And the one who trusts in him will never be put to shame." Again, we see Paul picking up on his theme, that this righteousness that comes from God through the gospel is by faith. And he makes some wild statements. He says Israel pursued a law of righteousness that they were trying to attain by works. And you might say to yourself, of course they were pursuing it as if it were by works, because it was based on law. And law said, thou shalt and thou shalt not. If you keep the commandments, you'll live. If you break the commandments, you'll die. But when Paul words it this way, there's an indication that even in the law and even in keeping commandments, there was a degree of faith that was necessary that God was looking for from his people. He was not looking for sheer obedience. He was looking for people who believed him, who trusted him, and from that heart of faith, then obeyed. And that's why the Israelites in the Old Testament never seemed to catch on, never quite seemed to get it. So that by the time Isaiah writes, God says, I know you're bringing me your sacrifices. And again, they aren't just sacrifices that they made up. They were sacrifices that he asked them to bring. He says, you're bringing me the sacrifices and you're keeping the festival dates, but that's not what I want. I want your hearts. I want you to be here doing these things because you want to, not simply out of sheer obedience. So even though on the surface it would seem that if the Israelites kept the law and pursued the law and pursued righteous action, but did it based on their effort, then they have righteousness. They are a righteous people. But Paul says, no, they did not attain it. In fact, again, he quotes from the Old Testament in Romans 1:17 when he says, the just or the righteous shall live by faith. This is something that God always desired from his people. This is something he desired from people he made covenants with. It was their faith in him, faith in his word. The very thing that the Israelites pursued in a manner that seemed logical, seemed like this would work, they actually did not get what they were pursuing. There always seems to be an appeal to what Paul calls the harsh treatment of the body in Colossians 2:23. He says, such regulations indeed have an appearance of wisdom with their self-imposed worship, their false humility, and their harsh treatment of the body, but they lack any value in restraining sensual indulgence. So what seems like the solution is actually the thing that's going to keep you away from the reality of having righteousness, as it did the Jewish people pursuing righteousness by works. In contrast, Paul says the Gentiles, who weren't even pursuing righteousness, they were fulfilling the lusts of the flesh. Everything that came to them as a desire to do, they did. It didn't matter. They weren't concerned about righteousness. They weren't looking for righteousness. They weren't worried about being righteous. They actually obtained righteousness. How? By believing the gospel. And what about the gospel? All the things that we went through in chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7, chapter 8. We understand that God did away with the old man and he has recreated humanity and made a new human being patterned after Jesus Christ. When you put your faith in that reality, you get righteousness that does not come by works, but it comes by simply believing the good news that what Jesus has done for you hooked you up with righteousness, and it's yours simply for the believing.
Thank you for joining us on Victory is Mine. If you're looking for a church home, we'd love to welcome you to Victory Christian Center in Carthage, Missouri at 13996 Burr Oak Road. Join us this Sunday at 10 a.m. or 5:30 p.m. and experience God's love, power, and victory in your life. You can also learn more about us at vccchurch.org. Have a blessed day.